Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, a place where dreams take flight, with authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives and meaningful conversations, where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our channel, USA Global TV. Download our app, USA Global TV. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. Thanks to our founder and executive producer, Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Music score by Yeffy Tang from Cloud Road Music. Voiceover artist Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. USA Global TV and Radio, your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, where we proudly provide world-class education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. Our show today is Judgment, the Hidden Sin, and it's an extension of my book by the very same name, Holy But Harmful, The Silent Sin of Judgment. A little twist on words there. Today, we have a very special guest, one of our own team members here at USA Global TV and Radio, and I actually had the pleasure of meeting him in person in Houston earlier this year. His name is Dr. David D. Schein, and he actually needs no introduction, but we will give him one. He is an entrepreneur. He is a professor. He is a lawyer. He is a TV show host and presenter, and he's an author. I have The Decline of America here, signed by the one and only Dr. David D. Schein, and I also have Bad Deal for America by Dr. David D. Schein. You can pick these up on Amazon and in fine bookstores. We're going to be talking today about ageism. What is it? It's as we get older, and we might not think about this when we're younger, are we being discriminated against in the workforce as well as other aspects and areas of life? I think the answer is yes, based on the statistics. But let's hear from the good doctor himself. He is the TV show host of Saving America on his own platform and here on USA Global TV and Radio. Welcome, Dr. David D. Schein. Hello.
Hello, thank you for that lovely introduction, and it is great to see you again, nearly in person. And of course, we had the great opportunity, along with another one of our wonderful hosts, Retta Laughlin, to host you for 2 days here in Houston. And that adds something special, because it's one thing is we have this connected video world, but it is very cool when we get to actually meet people in person. It's just something very different. So glad to have had that happen.
Thank you. I feel the same way. And I think it's important that we do have the opportunity to connect over a screen like this, because you actually can build a relationship. And then when you get to meet the person in person and give them a hug and say, wow, this is amazing that we've been able to create this beautiful relationship. And I personally want to thank you for sharing all of the amazing content that you have here on Saving America. You are one of our top 10 TV show hosts, and that's not by accident. Your productions are at the highest caliber and quality, and the storylines that you bring, some of them are very controversial, and you deliver them in the most professional manner. So thank you for that.
Well, we're very happy to do it, and I try not to be too controversial. I try and present a very even view of the world, because it is a challenge that we don't talk very much today. We seem to be very polarized, and my approach is to give people an opportunity to see the picture. Now, granted, I present it from my personal viewpoint, but we have guests from all walks of life who present some very interesting things, I think, and we're expanding our contact with guests. In fact, one of the things we've done in terms of improving this show is we are working on improving our technology. We're working on getting a new video introduction like the lovely one you have, and but we also have a new guest assistant producer who is booking our guests, and that's turned into great. And so we're increasing the number of guests that we have contact with.
Well, the process that you and your team are using is top shelf. So thank you again for that. Let's get a little bit into the topic today. I was doing some research in terms of what our workforce looks like today and the different generations. And let me just make sure I get my sources correct. So from what I read, it was from AARP, almost 2/3 of workers aged 50 and older are experiencing discrimination in their work. And then another study basically has that the total number of workers who are in the silent generation, 1920 to 1945 was when they were born, was down to about 1% of the workplace. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, it is a stunning statistic, and I can personally vouch for it, that I personally have experienced age discrimination in a variety of ways. And I work with employers. One of my many jobs is that I do help employers with employment matters, employment discrimination matters. Most of the complaints are about younger employees who simply don't show up for work. And yet at the same time, it can be very, very difficult. And my comment is that, if you're over 60, you're going to anticipate having serious problems finding a job. And somebody volunteered to me and said, heck, I think it's over 50 or 55, that it is really a serious issue in America. And my personal observation, which is parallel to what AARP said, is that if you take every other form of discrimination, gender and race and everything, and you put them all together, that is less than the amount of age discrimination in America. It is that severe a problem. And yet it's interesting because we don't get the headlines for age discrimination that we do for some other forms of discrimination. And I think that's part of the problem, that our society is not acknowledging how severe the problem is. And I'm glad to share my personal situation, because I don't know that I ever really thought about it. In fact, when I was on, I think, I was a very young person, 19 years old. I was on a public radio host in Philadelphia. And so I had to make myself look older so that I could have some credibility when I was meeting these different folks out there. And so it's kind of an interesting situation. Is to have a whole turnabout is what's happened to me, is that then I fast forward, and I went back to school and got my PhD in order to be involved in higher education. And I finished a year early in my PhD program and was considered one of the top graduates from a major university. And it took me 3 years of recruiting to get my first full-time academic position. And so that was kind of a wake-up call. And then subsequently, in subsequent recruiting, I've been ranked as very well qualified by the different headhunters, but have not had interviews. I've not actually been interviewed for positions that the headhunters that referred me felt that I was very well qualified for. So not only do I believe it's statistically correct, but I can personally vouch for the fact that it's a pretty tough world out there when you're a little bit older. And the irony of it is that the population across the board is aging in America. I mean, we have an aging population, and so it is very important that employers realize that they are leaving out a big part of the modern workforce today.
Well, thank you, Doctor, for your transparency about that. And I think you bring up a good point, and it's something that I've had conversations with other people who are actually in the corporate world, and they're at retirement age, but yet they don't necessarily want to retire, but they're afraid if they leave and go out on their own and they don't make it, they can't come back. So they stay even though they feel unfulfilled. And then I have friends who actually left corporate and they're out on their own and their business is not doing as well as they'd like it to be. And they think, well, I'd like to go back, but they won't take me. So it really is a tough place to be, between a rock and a hard place, because, for example, with all of your qualifications, all of your incredible experience, if you're not hireable, I don't know who is. So I guess it's a point of getting through the door, getting past the gatekeepers so you can actually sit and have a conversation with someone.
Yes, I think so. And it's interesting because I'm probably one of the most requested people on my university faculty. I'm teaching at a small to mid-sized university, and I'm averaging 3 requests a week year round for former students and even some former faculty to serve as a reference. So I'm loved as a reference because people respect what I do and enjoyed having me in the class, being in my classes, and yet that doesn't seem to translate into people standing in line to hire me, if you know what I mean.
So let's get into that a little bit, because that really is something that I find to be perplexing. Is it that the thought is that we at our ages are not trainable? We're not malleable. We don't have a lot of energy. We're going to call out sick. What are the reasons that all of this discrimination is coming on people who are our age?
Well, I'm not really sure about that because your point about training, I think, is certainly a relevant one. Is that um, a lot of businesses say, well, you can have somebody who's really an expert at something, but they don't know what our system is. So we're going to put our system in place, and we assume incorrectly, of course, that it's going to be easier to take somebody who has been out of school, out of college, or perhaps out of a graduate program for 3 or 4 years or 10 years to get things done. So it's a very different environment in terms of the perspective of the employer. But at the same time, it's kind of ironic because they are they give you all of these credentials that they're looking for, and it's like, well, okay, you've just described a 50-year-old person, but you're only interviewing people up to 35 years old. There's a little bit of a mismatch here between the type of experience that you claim that you want and education and what you're interviewing. And so it's some of it is pretty flagrant. I was recruited by a very well-respected headhunter firm that works exclusively in higher ed. And I was a candidate to be a dean of the business school for a well-known university up in Long Island, New York. And the headhunter called me a few weeks into the deal and said, I can't explain this, but they said that they wanted all full professors, which I am, as candidates, but they didn't pick any of the people that we selected to be interviewed. You were one of the 10 that we considered the 10 finalists, the 10 people they should interview. And he was pretty flustered. I established a very good relationship with him. He and I still stay in contact. But ironically, they hired an associate professor at a university as their dean, despite the fact that we had I'm a full professor and had met the standards. So that's a pretty flagrant example. And of course, that person that they did hire was 20 or 25 years my junior. So it's a pretty flagrant example. And somebody might say, in your audience, to say, well, gee, that's what the EEOC is for, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Why didn't you file an employment discrimination complaint? And the answer is that in my initial recruiting out of the PhD program, I did get so frustrated that I did file an EEOC complaint with an office, a regional office, the EEOC, and I got absolutely nothing, zero. no attention, no processing, nothing. And what happens is that unfortunately, a lot of people who are filing age discrimination claims do not fit the mantra or the focus of the regional EEOC offices. And I think that's a very disturbing pattern because I think the complaints, again, I'm in the business. I think I know what a legitimate complaint is, and not everybody can afford to hire an attorney. Just staying with the topic of discrimination just for another minute or two. One of the things is that in the early days of employment discrimination, and again, I've been in the industry pretty much within about 10 years of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 being passed, so I've been in the industry for most of the time that law's been in effect. It's a very important law, and it does provide significant protection to employees. But the process for filing complaints is fairly easy, but the process for moving forward. But in any event, attorneys, plaintiff side attorneys, used to take just about anybody came in the door and said, "Hey, I'm this, I'm that, and I was discriminated against," and they would take the cases on a contingency basis and then try and achieve a recovery for those employees. Well, what has happened in the last at least 5 years is a lot of those attorneys have changed to hourly billing and have said to somebody, well, you think you were discriminated against and you were sexually harassed, or you were, fired because you're female or gay or whatever. And the attorneys say, well, we're going to put you on the clock, give us a $5,000 or $10,000 retainer. Well, most people do not have, especially if they've been fired, do not have that kind of money. So it's actually a tougher business out there today to proceed under a claim.
So that's another type of discrimination, isn't it? If you don't have the money to actually follow through and have your claim heard.
Right. Well, what's happening, the EEOC is, to be fair to them, is overrun. I mean, they part of what I would like to see them do, and I know it sounds funny from an attorney who's on the other side. I do not represent claimants. I only represent businesses. And people, so this might sound like funny information, but basically the EEOC accepts at the first level almost everything that comes in the door. And that is part of the problem, because there may be 5% of those cases that are very legitimate, and those employers need to be educated about how they should be treating their employees. But what happens is that the EEOC, which is your federal agency that's supposed to be fixing the problem, has too many cases, and they cannot process them in a timely fashion, and it creates that challenge for the people who do not have the resources to hire attorneys to go after things. So it's a real conundrum out there. Is I don't think we can fix the problem without an effective federal agency that actually processes the better complaints, or the more legitimate complaints. What the EEOC is doing today is they're largely focusing, if you want the EEOC to actually take your case to court, the ones that show up in the news, the EEOC sued, particular county or big business, or, went after a high-tech company in California. Those cases are almost exclusively large numbers of employees have come together to an EEOC office and said, hey, we've got a systemic problem at our business. But if you're an individual and say you work for a company with 30 or 40 employees and you feel that you've been discriminated against, and this applies to any type of discrimination. We were talking about age discrimination, but it applies across the board. Is what happens is the EEOC is like, yeah, we'll investigate your complaint. They get a letter from the employer. They do a minimal amount of investigation. The other flip side to this EEOC thing is, I think people file a complaint and they think that the EEOC is going to run out there and beat up the employer and get them a $100,000 check and their job back. And what happens is it's like a big thump. Is the person files the EEOC complaint, which can now be done online, and then the complaint generally sits for about a year before anybody does anything. And so it's not nearly the charging white knight that people think that agency will be. And again, part of it is just the way agencies structure, but also because they have so many complaints coming in that they've decided to focus on these group large complaints, like taking on a whole industry or particular manufacturing plant, something like that. So it is a really interesting challenge. And again, for older Americans who may have less experience dealing with these agencies, it's probably even more frustrating. And many of them do not have the financial means to hire a private attorney to pursue their claim.
I really appreciate you sharing both sides of that in terms of the EEOC and the work that you do, and actually the counterpoint that you have on the opposite side. That's wonderful. We are going to take a quick break, and we're actually going to hear from Tracy Cram-Perkins, who is one of our team members here at USA Global TV and Radio. And she's written a book that has changed so many lives, Dementia Home Care Before, During, and After. Let's take a look, and we'll be right back with The Good Doctor. USA Global TV and Radio proudly presents Tracy Cram-Perkins, a dementia caregiving survivor teaching how to balance care with peace of mind. #1 resource for dementia caregivers. It's the book Dementia Home Care: How to Prepare Before, During, and After. Over 17,000 copies sold of this must-have guide. And now a testimonial from Tracy Smith.
If I was to describe this book to someone who is going through a similar situation, I would underscore how important it is to have some sort of a tool or a guidebook to help you through certain stages. And there's so many, it's such an unknown topic to the average person. And to have this as a reference is essential. It's going to help you get through it personally, as well as help your loved one manage.
To learn more, go to TracyCramPerkins.com. Tracy Cram-Perkins is an award-winning author. She's also the host of Dementia Home Care television show. Watch it here on USA Global TV and Radio. Welcome back to USA Global TV and Radio, and our show today is Judgment: The Hidden Sin, Exposing Ageism with Dr. David D. Schein, author of The Decline of America and Bad Deal for America. Let's bring the good doctor back. Doctor, it's good to have you. Thanks for staying through the break. Hello.
Thank you. And I do want to put in a quick pitch, is that, as you may know, Tracy Cram-Perkins was one of our guests on Saving America, I think probably about a year ago now, and talked about something that is very, very important and obviously relevant to today's topic of ageism, because a quick observation, during the last 2 years of the Biden administration, people kept saying, oh, he's not really a very good president because he's too old. And it drives me crazy, because a fraction of the aging population does indeed get age-related dementia, but the rest of us ain't demented, far as I can tell. And it is offensive to me personally when people keep talking about age instead of talking about somebody's mental condition, which is different. And I point out that one of my contacts in past years was a fellow who was 97 or 98 years old, was as sharp as a tack, and was out there playing golf 5 and 6 days a week, and kept scoring his head. And we need to be more sensitive to how we even talk about age, because age and dementia are not the same thing. And I think Tracy does a very good job of helping people deal with the specific part of the population that is dealing with it. And ironically, there is an early onset Alzheimer's, which hits people in their 40s and 50s, and it's a much more devastating disease than what you might call traditional or Alzheimer's that hits later in life. And so again, people need to focus on the condition of people that they're dealing with and not on their sheer chronological age.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. This show is about judgment, and that's what we're talking about today. I read an article in Business Week Daily from 2023, and it was actually citing a Gallup study. And I'm just going to paraphrase what I remember reading. But from what I read from those who were surveyed, the millennials were much more likely to be open to leaving their job within a year. And many of them, I think it was 60% of them who were surveyed, I don't have the exact numbers, but said that they were open to leaving their job now. And so the average number of years, the tenure for millennials, according to this Gallup study, my interpretation of it was 2.75 years versus boomer/traditionalists, which was 8 years. So if you're an employer out there, the question has to be posed, why are you discriminating against older people who are going to stay with you longer and bring more experience? Dr. Schein, thoughts?
Precisely, and like I said, it's personally impacted me, and I actually, in the employers that I work with, I don't get to talk with them very much, but I can tell you that as someone who is one of the fixers, one of the people who works with companies that are dealing with problem employees, almost all of the employees that I am called about are under 50 years old, and the majority of them are under 30 years old. And I think it points to one issue which I don't think we've corrected in our society, is that we've somehow created a generation who doesn't value showing up for work. And in contrast, the mature population out there, we know that what we bring to the job and that what we do is important, and we show up. I mean, I've been in higher ed for about 25 years now, part-time for about a little less than 10 of that, and the rest of it as a full-time faculty member. And in my lifetime, I have never missed a class due to illness. And yet I have students who are far younger than me who say, oh, I've got a little bit of a cold, or oh, I don't feel well, or oh, my car broke down, and all that stuff. And I'm thinking to myself as a professor, I'm like, why not walk? Why not take the bus? Make an effort to get here. And so it's just kind of interesting that the different level of commitment that people have. And I think, as you pointed out, I think employers are missing a real resource when they do not fully evaluate or fairly evaluate the younger people versus the older people when they're facing an applicant pool. And I hope we can get past that. And like I said, one of the starting points which ties in with this issue of judgment is to stop referring to people as old. I mean, our entire perspective of our lifetime is so different today than it was. I mean, I remember my own grandparents when I was a youngster, and they moved slowly. My paternal grandfather died relatively young from disease, but my paternal grandmother, lived to be into her 80s, which was very good for that generation, and was pretty sharp up to, fairly close to the end. But our level of physical activity that we observed of our grandparents is so dramatically different. I mean, there are a lot of people who are older than me are out on the golf course and out on the tennis courts and racing bicycles and motorcycles and things like that. And our entire society has adjusted to a more normal, a more norm. The more norm is that we do live a lot longer, but we're also more vigorous in that time period. And a good example was, this is a sad example, but a very accurate one. Actress Diane Keaton, a very fine actress, very well liked, passed away recently at age 79. And the comment I heard from several of my friends was, gosh, she died very young. And that's the reality that our workforce and our communities and our society need to adjust to, that we are not our parents' and our grandparents' generation. We've got dramatically better health care. We've got better information on being healthy. And if we take that advice, I think, living to 100 is a very reasonable goal for most Americans who pay reasonable attention. And I know you and I are both what we would call health nuts, but I think people even with more modest health objectives, achieving 100 is not that bad. But how much of that period of time are you going to sit around on your hands versus being a productive member of society and going to work and doing consulting? And of course, some people, if they have the financial wherewithal, go into volunteer work as opposed to staying on the clock.
Absolutely. Excellent points, Doctor. Thank you so much. I do have a couple of follow-up comments to dovetail on what you said. I think the first thing is that's so interesting. You are 100% committed to what it is that you do. I know every week there's going to be a show for us to post, and I know that you're not missing any classes. And I know, for example, our other team member we referenced earlier, Red O'Loughlin, he's completely and totally loyal and committed to what it is he does. I know I actually broadcast through my mother's entire decline of life. And then even on the day she died, I watched her on my little phone. I watched her die downstairs while I was closing out a show. And it's just amazing that we have this incredible commitment to doing what it is that we're doing. But yet the younger people, many of whom maybe our generation even raised, has a completely different perspective. And maybe they look at the way that we live our lives and they think, oh, I don't want to be working that much or committed that much to what it is I'm doing. But yet we have this passion for what it is that we're doing. So I'd like to just go from there and talk a little bit about some information that I happened to pull up about ageism from the World Economic Forum. I didn't know this, but there are 4 types of ageism: personal, institutional, intentional, and unintentional. And so I think personal, like if we're on a show about judgment, we know what it is when we're judged personally, or you're too old to do that. Oh, at your age, you shouldn't be. So we know what that is. But when it comes to institutional, intentional, and unintentional, what are your thoughts about when something is judgment from an institution, like what you're talking about in the corporate world and what you're even going through in your own life?
Well, as you know, I do some short pieces called Business Law 101, and one of the pieces that we mentioned was a person who accused. Apparently, there are a couple corporations that provide applicant screening software, and that, I mean, there's dozens that provide it, but there's 1 or 2 that have a large percentage of the market. And the reason for this is, if you're a fairly medium or large size company and you place an application, you post a job posting, you get tons of applications. So the idea of the software is to sort out people who are clearly unqualified from the people that should be interviewed and have more intensive review of their files. And there's a lawsuit that's now been filed, a class action, alleging that the software deliberately excludes older applicants. And so that is in its early stages, so there's no outcome there. To be fair, the software company claims that they do not do that the software itself is not discriminatory. And what they say is that the employers put in the criteria that they want to be screened. So basically, the software companies kind of washing their hands, saying it's not really our problem, and that they do not control what the employer puts in. So who knows?
Very interesting. And I'll just share something personal, which I actually haven't told anyone. But earlier this week, I applied for some continuing education at a very well known university, and it's all done online. And when I looked at who the dean and the leaders are of this particular entity, I saw that they were probably in their 30s and maybe in their early 40s. And so I haven't heard anything back, which I wouldn't expect. But the first thing that I thought to myself is, I wonder if I won't even make it through because of my age. And of course, this is just conjecture, but that's what we're talking about because it does come up. You do think about it. And something else I want to just touch on, because you and I are both health nuts. At the place where I work out, they have specific classes for people who are 55 and older. And I've never gone to any of them. I think I might have shared this with you. I go to the classes with the younger people and I'm in the first row. And I do think to myself, when I look around, I'm looking around like I must be at least 40 years older, 30 years older than everyone else. Am I being judged for being in the first row? So these things do come up as we get older. And when I was younger, when people were older, you would revere them. You would look up to them. You'd want to pick their brain and find out about their experiences. But it does seem like it's going the opposite way.
Absolutely, and I think it's interesting. The particular gym that I work out is has a pretty good mix. In fact, I would say there are more people over 50 than under 50. But to be fair, I belong to a gym that has indoor tennis courts, and it's a more expensive monthly fee than most of your big gyms like Lifetime and some of those type of gyms that provide everything except tennis courts, which take a lot of real estate and build in a higher overhead. But it is kind of interesting to see who shows up at the gym. But then they have a periodic happy hour, and the people at the parties and the happy hours are dramatically younger than the folks that I'm in the gym early in the morning. I go in early in the morning. My mantra is, if I work out first thing in the morning, nothing worse can happen to me all day.
I love this. I love this viewpoint and perspective. Thank you. Dr. Schein, we are coming to the end of this particular episode. What would you like to share that I might not have asked you yet?
Be sensitive to what's happening out there. Is if you hear somebody refer to somebody as old, ask them what old means to them, and ask them about their own experiences, and maybe turn it around and say, how do you reflect on age at different parts in your life? Like I said, I've suffered age discrimination in both directions because I was young entrepreneur, young host on public radio in Philadelphia, and dealt with being maybe too young. I was very fortunate. I went to the same university as one of the key PR people in Philadelphia, and I didn't know that at the time, but he showed a great deal of deference and opportunity to me and gave me a wonderful opportunity to meet many of the stars of that time period. And it was a very important developmental thing for me. And flip it around to today is that I think that if people who are a little bit younger see people with a little bit more experience who are willing to chat with them or willing to mentor them, they should seek that out. So in other words, I think there's a win-win situation here for people in both directions.
That's a great way to close out the episode. Thank you, Doctor. What's the best way for people to reach out to you, and who would you like to contact you?
Well, we always say I'm pretty easy to find on the web, and people just need to remember that my last name has a C in it. It's Schein, and of course, our umbrella organization is ClaremontManagementGroup.com.
I was looking for your LinkedIn. Let's pull that up also so that people can take a look at this and they can follow you there. So
And I'm very active on LinkedIn.
For people who are listening on an audio platform only, it's David Schein, Schein, over on LinkedIn. And then his website, as he mentioned, is Claremont Management Group. All right, Doctor, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for being here today with us. And thank you for sharing all of your knowledge and wisdom.
Thank you again for the invite. It's always a pleasure working with you.
You as well. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye for now.
Thank you.
That's this episode, the conclusion for Judgment, the Hidden Sin, Exposing Ageism with Dr. David D. Schein. Please do reach out to him, connect with him on LinkedIn, go to his website. Buy his books. As I mentioned, they're right here. I highly recommend that you pick up a copy of Decline of America as well as Bad Deal for America. There's a lot of chatter about what's going on in the U.S. today. And the good doctor has an incredible show called Saving America. As I mentioned before, it's here on this platform. It's also on his own platform, and you can find excerpts on it on LinkedIn as well as Instagram and Facebook. And I believe if you'd like to be a guest, you can also reach out. I think there's a little bit of a backlog, but I'm sure that they would send you an application for you to apply to be on the show. So thank you for being here with me today. I am thrilled to have you. If you're interested in being a guest on this show or any of our other shows, please go to our website, which is usaglobaltv.com/book-your-session. And also a special announcement, this book that I have out in the world, which is Holy But Harmful, The Silent Sin of Judgment, the workbook will be available at the end of the week. So there's actually 50 pages of reflections and activities for you to take part of so that you can actually test your own knowledge about how judgmental you are, or when you are being judged, what it is that you can do and how to deal with that. So it's all in reference to elevated listening and being present as opposed to judging other people. All right, don't judge me, but we have to go for now. We'll look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.
Every woman carries a story of strength, of purpose, of light. Through her courage, the world is transformed. Through her grace, generations are inspired. This is Iconic Women. Within Every Woman Lives a Goddess, a celebration of brilliance, beauty, and empowerment. Join us every Wednesday at 11 a.m. New York, 4 p.m. London time. Only here on USA, Global TVR, and radio. Featuring the iconic Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck, honoring voices that shine across the world. Subscribe to our YouTube channels, USA Global TV and Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck, to watch and engage with all our content. World-class education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration.
Which of these 5 statements sounds mostly like you? 1. I often wake up in the middle of the night worrying about my future. 2. I'm angry or resentful towards a specific person. 3. I have anxious, obsessive, compulsive thoughts throughout the day. 4. I have an addiction like smoking, drinking, shopping, sugar, or social media. And 5, I feel that I'm wasting away my life. Hello, I'm Dr. Alkistis Agio, and for over 25 years, I've been coaching and training people from all over the world to transform their fears, insecurities, anxiety, and anger into mental and emotional freedom. I'm confident that my simple 3-step method based on Greek philosophy can help you to transform into the joyful, confident, free human being that you deserve to be. I want to invite you to join my weekly online coaching group to finally get the results that you want. Look, you've tried it alone so far, and you've had some okay results. But let's face it, you're still feeling stuck right now, spinning your wheels. Einstein said that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Now, unless you realize this as a fact, that you are a prisoner of your own mind, you can't move forward. I'm here to support you, as well as the whole community that we are co-creating. Stop feeling stuck. Stop feeling depressed. You don't have to do it alone, and alone isn't working anyway. Sign up today, and I'll meet you on the inside of our amazing weekly group call. I guarantee that you'll make progress from the very first session.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honoured to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at USAGlobalTV.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/USAGlobalTV. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning, and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, we're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Music by Johnny Dyes. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative Direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Copyright 2025. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.